I was a bookworm growing up. My favorite thing to do was to curl up in a corner with a great book and read it from front to the very end. So I was not really active, beside being with my friends and riding bikes and jumping rope and playing jacks and running around in the backyard, things like that, but I wasn't an athlete. So it wasn't until college that I got physically active. In high school a little bit, I did play tennis. My father was a very good tennis player. He was on the tennis team in college. He even had a leather sweater, which I wore for many years, until I wore it out. So I played a little tennis and loved the game, but really was not an athlete. I just played when my father was killing me on the tennis court. So I started running in college, and that was about the time that Jane Fonda was doing her exercise videos, and Jackie Sorensen started aerobics, and at some point I started teaching for the YWCA and other gyms, and then I ended up with my own exercise business and taught exercise classes and had instructors all over the Washington, D.C. area, and loved it, absolutely loved it. And so for many years I thought health was just about diet and exercise. I thought it was only about the body. And it was through having my own business, and I had a full-time job in my 30s when I had a whole lot more energy and candle to burn at that age. So I would work all day and then run my business at night. And I was off and out from 8 a.m. till 9 p.m., sometimes 4 or 5 days a week. And at some point, I just pushed the envelope too far and ended up with overuse injuries and ended up stressed out and ended up not happy about this business, even though I was happy about the transformations people were having physically. So then I learned that health was tied to rest as well. That it's not just important to be active, but it's important to be at rest at times. The body needs to recuperate. You need time to play, you need time to sit, you need time to just be still. And then into my 40s, I started to realize that through reading and experiences, that spirit was involved in my health. That what my consciousness was about affected what was going on physically and vice versa. That there was this body-mind-spirit connection. And the more I meditated, the more harmony I had physically, the less stressed I was. And I realized I also needed to control my emotions, that my heart sometimes got all tied up in what I was doing. You remember when we're younger and everything is a big deal. We're passionate about everything, even the smallest little things. And at some point you learn it's not all that important. We learn to pick our battles. So it took a long time, probably into my 40s good, before I realized that health was about body, mind, spirit, and heart. And it wasn't until my voyage into unity, into these principles that we learn about and we live, that I really started to think about health consciousness and how do I live my health on all 4 levels: body, mind, spirit, and heart. I started to get messages in my meditation about something different to eat. And I would think, why am I thinking about oatmeal? And it's been 30 years since I've had oatmeal. Just came up out of the blue. But since I'd learned to trust, I started having it for breakfast. And I realized that it helped me with some problems I was having physically. Things like that kept happening. The more in tune I was with spirit, the more I realized there was this conversation between my body and my mind. It's interesting, I was just listening to that song, it said, "Look up, child," and I suddenly had this picture that most of us, when we look and we think about our bodies, we look down. And I think we also think down about our bodies, especially as we age. And we think about everything going south. And we associate aging with our bodies falling apart. In fact, we think it's natural. And that they should fall apart. And that we become less active, or we become more brittle. And maybe we become more physically brittle because we're more mentally brittle. Are we becoming more spiritually brittle? Are we becoming more staid in our consciousness about our bodies? So if, like those song lyrics, if we started to look up when thinking about our health and our bodies, how would our bodies change? How might our health be affected? I took a class at Healing and Wholeness at Unity Worldwide Spiritual Institute, an online course, and we listened to a lot of YouTube videos by Bruce Lipton. And he has a book called The Biology of Belief. And so I started to listen to a lot of those YouTube videos and started to read this book and started to read some other things by some other scientists. And now they're figuring out, and we now know, that DNA can change. We used to think it was static. We used to think that there were only a certain number of brain cells. And now we know that brain cells can regenerate. We now know that you can talk to your body and the body will respond. I have an ongoing conversation with my body. And my body has one with me. There are times when my body says very loudly, "I don't like what you just ate. I don't like that you stayed up late. I don't like that you stopped doing that particular exercise for the last couple of months or years. I don't like that you're sitting too long." Every single time my body feels tense when I get up, I know I've been sitting too long. So I move more often, and I have an app now that goes off every single hour, and it tells me to exercise for 1 minute. And it's different. It's interesting how fast an hour can go when you have to exercise for a minute. And I'm thinking, gosh, is it time again? And then it goes off and it'll tell me what it wants me to do. So I go from stretched out on the couch to jumping jacks. And I remember the first time it had me do it, I think I started this last year, man, a minute of jumping jacks was long and hard. But I go to spin class and pump out an hour worth of being on the bike, but jumping jacks took my breath away. 60 seconds, a minute. A minute.
Yeah, my stomach is a way of telling me, don't eat that again.
Yes, don't eat that again. That's right. Or I'll give you some exercise, run into the restroom, right? So Myrtle Fillmore, our co-founder, she started out wanting to be healed. And if your word for the year is health, I highly recommend that you get this book, Myrtle Fillmore's Healing Letters. Myrtle is fierce. And she wasn't always fierce. And she wasn't always fierce physically. But she talks about the body-mind connection and working with spirit for our health. This is an excerpt from one of her letters. I was once an emaciated little woman, upon whom relatives and doctors had placed the stamp TB, tuberculosis. And this was only one of the ailments. There were others considered beyond help, except possibly the changing of structures through an operation. There were family problems too. We were a sickly lot and came to the place where we were unable to provide for our children. In the midst of all this gloom, we kept looking for the way out, which we felt sure would be revealed. It was. The light of God revealed to us. The thought came to me first that life was of God, that we were inseparably one with the source, and that we inherited from the divine and the perfect Father. What that revelation did to me at first was not apparent to the senses, but it held my mind above negation, and I began to claim my birthright and to act as though I believed myself the child of God, filled with His life. Myrtle heard that she was a child of God, and she thought, her next thought was, if that is the case, then I cannot inherit sickness. And she held on to that, held on to it in her consciousness. In another excerpt, she says, this is later on when she's cured herself. You ask what restored me to vigorous health. It was a change of mind from the old carnal mind that believes in sickness to the Christ mind of life and permanent health. Quote, be transformed by the renewal of your mind, unquote. That's Romans 12:2. Quote, as he thinketh in his heart, so is he, from Proverbs 23:7. I applied spiritual laws effectively, blessing my body temple until it manifested the innate health of spirit. These wonderful laws will work for you too when you apply them diligently and in faith. Diligently and in faith. She never let go of the thought that she could be healthy. Never. Never. In fact, someone said, who's read a lot of her works, that she was surprised when her life came to an end. And she was not feeling well, and she started to feel her age. But she also knew that probably she was supposed to continue her work in another dimension. Interesting. That her work would continue elsewhere. So even death didn't mean the end of health for her. She just thought, I'll be working somewhere else. So as we're going through this year of I Am, and some of us are affirming health, and probably all of us at some point during the day are thinking about our health, aren't we? In 1 Corinthians, Paul, actually he's talking about sexual immorality, but the question comes up, and it is a question as if it's a surprise that we don't know this. Don't you know that the body is the temple of the Holy Spirit? And that's how it's posed. Do you not know? As if it's a given. But I think we live as if it's not a given. And if this is the temple of the Holy Spirit, what shape is our temple in? How do we care for it? How do we think of it? Do we always look down upon it? Or when we think of our health, do we look up, child? as the song said, and think of our bodies in spiritual context. Think of our health in spiritual context. Think of the next meal that you have in spiritual context. For a lot of us, eating is a contact sport. What can I eat? It tastes good. I love that. We eat as much as we can of it, right? Till we feel belly up. We've all been there. And there are times when I'm eating, when I say, stop now, stop now. Stop now, stop now. In between taking extra bites. And then after I've had more, I sit there and I have a moment of regret and say, well, I told myself to stop and I didn't. So what do we really think about our health? And if we're thinking in the spiritual, is our health a part of that thought? Is health really a divine activity? And really, even if you haven't chosen health as your word for the year, maybe it should be kind of your minor subject. Your major might be love, but do you love your body? Your major might be awareness. Are you aware of your body, its state of health? Are you aware of what it's saying to you? I believe our bodies are always talking to us, just like I believe spirit is always talking to us. Because your body's always telling you when you're hungry, it's telling you when you're getting full, it tells you when it's tired, tells you when it hurts, tells you there's something wrong, tells you when something's right, tells you when you're tense, tells you when you're peaceful. And I really do believe that that spirit talking through my body to me and wondering if I'm going to listen. Spirit doesn't really wonder, but are we listening? And do we have a disconnect between body and mind? And is that convenient for us? Do we listen when our bodies feel good and disconnect when it's not? Because we don't want to hear it. Because we don't want to give up the sweets, or we don't want to give up whatever it is we think we should give up. Or when we hear that we should have something that's good for us, and we don't. There's a commercial on the radio, I forget what it's for, but actually I think it's for a vitamin supplement, and it's supposed to have condensed vitamins, condensed vegetables. And it says, how are you supposed to get the recommended servings of vegetables each day? And probably we should eat vegetables at every meal. I keep thinking it's simple.
What about toxic cleaning? It's like spring cleaning. Toxic cleansing.
Cleansing the body, yeah. The body always works towards preservation.
Yes.
No matter what you do to it, it will try to keep you alive. One of the most wonderful stories I ever heard was about a man who was lost at sea for many, many, many weeks. And because you can't drink salt water, he started to eat the eyes of the fish, raw. His mind was telling him to eat the eyes of the fish, and he thought they were delicious. The body, his brain told him that that's what he needed to eat to survive. And later on, the doctors told him if he had not eaten that, he would have died. And so after he gets back, Does he want fish eyes again? No.
Probably not. Back to tacos.
Please God, give me a burger, right? But while he was starving to death and thirsting for fresh water, he wanted fish eyes. His body and his brain told him what he needed. That's the only thing he survived. It's the only reason he survived for all of those weeks. He thought they were delicious. They were a delicacy to him while he was on that boat, in that water for all those weeks. And he couldn't get enough of it. And then when he's back, and he's rescued, and he has other food available, his body doesn't want it anymore. How fascinating is that? That your body will let you know, your brain will let you know, body and brain communicating. And I think we hear these messages, even though we're not stranded on the ocean, we hear these messages, and again we walk away and say, I want something else. What do we really think about our health? And these bodies, these temples. If your word is blessed, do you bless your body every day? Do you think of it as a blessed thing? How many times have you read someone who said, it doesn't matter how much money you have in the world, if you don't have health, you don't have anything. So what are we thinking about these temples? What are we doing for them every day? How are we blessing them? How are we aware of them? Do you ask it what it needs? I do all the time. It's just like asking Spirit, because aren't we Spirit? And then trust that whatever you hear is what's right for you. I hear all the time, go to bed now. Actually, go to sleep. I go to bed, but then I watch Netflix. Because I want to relax. And my body's calling for rest. And episodes of ER are not restful. I mean, they're in the emergency room, and there's all, the paddles are out, and there, stuff, body cavities open. It's just, yeah. There's always drama. I mean, that's the show. Yeah, a lot of nights, that's how I go to sleep. Interesting. But I think because I've been busy all day, that's what I need. Part of me wants it. When my body's saying, just close your eyes. Just rest. Just rest. How many of us do, go, work. And feel guilty when we take off. Take a day off and you think, I should be doing something right now. Maybe I should get to the honey-do list. Maybe I should get to my list of stuff to do. Maybe I could do one more thing, send one more email. There's not just one more email. It never takes just another minute. I always tell myself that. I'll just take a minute, send this email. It's never just one. Never just one potato chip, right?
Then you have to check Facebook.
Then you have to check Facebook, that's right. Yes.
Craisins.
Craisins, oh. My nemesis, craisins. Do you not know that the body is the temple of the Holy Spirit? So if we're thinking of our health, if we're affirming divine health, the spirit of health, the divine idea of health, what does that mean? How does that change the game? What do you pray for? What are you affirming? Are you walking the talk? Myrtle says it's useless to affirm health and then go out and do something contrary to what you just affirmed. You might as well save your breath. Anytime you're out of alignment, it's not going to work. These are amazing structures. Amazing. Think about all the things that it does during the day that you don't have to think about. Right now, as we sit in these chairs, thousands upon thousands of operations are going on in this body. Cells communicating, having life. And according to some scientists, we can impress upon that life with our thoughts and with our affirmation, with our prayer. And if we believe that we are in the limitless realm because we are spirit, do we really believe it when it comes to our bodies? I think that's the ultimate test for a lot of us. Because it's easy to separate the two. But I believe they're inextricably linked. Just like spirit flows through everything, it doesn't mean your body is excluded from that. So maybe if we think about it as a temple, how would you care for a temple? How would you think about the temple? How would you speak while in a temple? Don't most of us get somehow we change a little bit when we step into a temple. There's a reverence there. Do we treat ourselves with reverence? And do we hold on to that reverence even if our bodies seem to be betraying us? Continuing to look up. So I just ask that maybe you continue to look up, even when it's hard to. Even when this feels like it's falling apart, look up. And if it's hard to affirm that there's something wonderful happening physically, maybe you ask. Here I am, Lord, the song said. It is I, Lord. Maybe you say, here I am. What would you have me do today? Treat your body like the reverent spirit it is, like the sacred thing that it is, and ask it, what would you have me do today? And oh my gosh, then go do it. Or not do it. Maybe the question is, what would you have me not do today? Do you not know that your body is a temple?